The success of evil people such as liars, scammers, and scammers in this world often makes us think about the reasons. After much thought, I came to the conclusion that the answer lies in most people. Most of us, as a rule, are honest and decent people who value truth and kindness in communication. As a result, we tend to expect the same level of honesty and decency from others. Unfortunately, this assumption can often be used by those who do not share the same moral values. Our vulnerability to lying people without a moral compass makes us vulnerable to deception and manipulation without our knowledge. Being honest people, we often cannot suspect that others may be lying or cheating. This harsh reality was taught to me by Gina Giannopoulos, or more precisely, Gina Giannopoulos Macmillan, as she is now called after she married another man. I, Alex Macmillan, am her ex-husband. One morning I was startled by ominous noises coming from the engine of my Lexus. I drove the car to Marshall Motors, where Dominic has been taking care of my cars for 10 years. Around lunch he called me, but instead of giving me the go-ahead, he asked me to come and talk. When I arrived, he took me to a secluded office at the back of the store. "Alex, the engine is working fine. It's just that the belt is a little loose," he began. "But there is another problem." He looked at me intently. Someone messed up the brake line. There was enough hydraulic fluid for a routine stop, but the situation is still alarming. I was shocked when he warned me, "If you have to go down a steep slope or stop abruptly, the car will be destroyed." It's been 6 months since Gina and I moved into a luxurious modern house in the suburbs. The house was stunning, with high ceilings and lots of windows, located in a quiet wooded area. But he was at the end of a dead end, off the main road with a steep slope. If I had driven home in my car that evening, I would have faced a high risk of a fatal accident. After a few minutes, I took a break to collect my thoughts. "Dominic, could you do me a favor?" I asked. "Please don't tell anyone about this yet. Have you managed to fix it yet?" "No, unfortunately not," Dominic replied. "It looks like a crime has been committed, or at least an attempt to commit it. I think we need to go to the police." "Okay," I agreed, pausing to think. "How about this? Let's take a picture of the damaged brake line and draw up a report, as if we had reported it to the police, but we won't call them yet. We'll just leave the car in the backyard. I'll rent one of those old cars you have for a few days. Are there surveillance cameras on the premises?" Dominic hesitated before nodding. "Here's the thing. Whoever did this will want to cover their tracks as soon as they realize that I'm still alive. I bet they'll try to steal a car from the parking lot in the next few nights. In the meantime, I don't want to involve the police. We can use the camera footage as evidence." 45 minutes later, I parked my rented blue Corolla at the entrance to the house. I decided to take the day off to reflect on recent events. It was clear that the attempt on my life was made for the sake of money. As the president and co-founder of Apex, a successful Silicon Valley software company worth $6.5 billion, I suspected that someone was targeting me to harm the company. Since Carmelita, our cook and housekeeper, took the day off, the house was unusually quiet. Gina, who was probably shopping or playing tennis, was also absent. Having lost my head, I wandered around the house thinking about possible suspects and motives for mysterious events. I decided to call Jeff Denham, a longtime friend who owns the Apex Uses security company. Without disclosing unnecessary information, I hinted at my suspicions about a possible problem, whether it's current financial inconsistencies or an impending threat to the company. Jeff and I have agreed that his team of financial experts will conduct a thorough check of our computers and financial documents. I instructed him to create a system that would allow his employees to access the necessary information from the desktop in my office, while emphasizing the need for confidentiality. We planned to inform everyone that a routine check was being carried out. After that, I contacted Meredith, my longtime secretary, and asked her to set a temporary password on my computer for Jeff, who was supposed to arrive later that day. Satisfied with the arrangements, I continued my wanderings. While at our home computer, I accidentally looked through Gina's files, including her email, and found that they were all password protected, which aroused my curiosity. I couldn't help but wonder what Gina might be hiding on our computer that she wouldn't want me to see. The only thing that came to my mind was the unlikely scenario that she was planning a surprise party. I decided to talk to her about it later. When I was sitting in the kitchen sipping tea at about 4:30, Gina suddenly came in, and her reaction was like I had never seen before. She was looking at me with her mouth slightly open and her face white, as if she was going to faint. Pressing her whole body against the doorframe, she gasped, "Alex, what are you doing here?" I smiled gently. "Actually, honey, I live here. Do you remember?" Pulling herself together, she sat down at the table opposite me. With a forced smile, she said, "Of course, baby. It's just that you're almost never home this early, and I haven't seen your car on the street." A split second later, I was about to explain to her all about the brake line. I just mentioned that I had problems with the engine, so I had to leave it with Dominic for a few days. I ended up renting one of their old cars, which is now parked in the driveway. At that time, I didn't tell my wife the truth, perhaps because I didn't want to bother her. I didn't want to talk about someone trying to hurt me. But on reflection, I realized that my reluctance to tell her was due to completely different motives. As for her surprise when she saw me in the kitchen, it made me think. I was not just surprised, but completely stunned, as if this was the most unexpected thing in the world. Her reaction puzzled me, and the more I thought about it later, the more it bothered me. "Oh," she said, trying to pull herself together. "It's great that you came back so quickly. What are we going to do for dinner? Maybe we should go somewhere since Carmelita has left?" "That's a great idea," I replied. "I'm going to take a shower first and maybe we can go to the Andante." When she hurriedly left the room, a few minutes later I heard the sound of a running shower. I put the cup in the sink and headed to the bedroom, planning to freshen up and change into a more casual outfit before our walk. When I got to the almost closed bedroom door, I was surprised to hear Gina talking on the phone in a quiet and gloomy tone. I wondered why she turned on the shower before she called. I couldn't make out a single intelligible word, just a muffled conversation that left me confused. "No, definitely not. Yes, we need to. Okay, I'll see you later." These words made me stop in my tracks. It was Gina talking to Jeff Denham, my buddy and security expert. His middle name is Dude, and I've been calling him Doodle since we were in 8th grade. Gina also started calling him by that nickname, so it was clear who she was talking to. I waited until she finished talking and went to the bathroom. After a couple of minutes, I finally went into the bedroom to change my clothes. I decided to wash up in the guest bathroom so as not to interfere with Gina taking a shower. My thoughts were racing in my head as I tried to make sense of everything that was happening. Could Gina and my friend Jeff have been involved in the incident with my car? It seemed unlikely, considering that Gina and I had been married for 8 years. I was 46 and she was 37. I have already been married and divorced once and had 2 wonderful children. I only saw the children during the summer holidays and occasionally on a visit, because after the divorce their mother moved them 2,000 miles away. The first time I saw Gina was when she was giving a tour of the Apex offices, working as a sales representative for the computer maintenance company we did business with. Intrigued, I tried to figure out her identity and set up a lunch date with a mutual friend from her company. It was a decision I didn't regret. Gina was stunningly beautiful. She was one of the 10 most beautiful women you could meet, even if you woke her up from a deep sleep. When she finds time to get dressed and do her makeup, she just takes your breath away. She has long, dark hair, captivating dark eyes, high cheekbones, and a confident smile. Her athletic figure is toned and in good shape. She has a certain aura, a manner of bearing, purposefully walking and looking into the eyes, radiating confidence and incredible attractiveness. From the moment I first noticed her, I realized that I would have to fight for her attention. It was a pleasant surprise for me when we started dating, quickly moved on to a serious relationship, and eventually got engaged and got married a year later. Despite the fact that I was not conventionally handsome and was 9 years older than Gina, I knew that my financial success played a role in her attraction to me, and I did not mind it. After all, what's the point of being successful if it doesn't help you attract beautiful women? We had a strict prenuptial agreement, which stated that she would receive a maximum of $1 million if we divorced within the first 20 years of marriage. I was sure that Gina's affection for me was equal to her affection for my wealth. We envisioned a prosperous future together, and as long as her enjoyment of my wealth brought me joy, I was content. Gina has brought me great happiness. Although she was extravagant in money, I had a lot of it, so it wasn't a problem. She was energetic, sociable, and lively, always looking for entertainment. Gina made friends easily, often took me to parties and flirted with other men, but by the end of the evening she always came home with me, and we usually had a great time together. She was as brave in bed as she was in every other area of her life. She loved adrenaline-fueled activities, from hang gliding to rock climbing. She pushed me to the limit, and I enjoyed every moment. But recent events have called everything into question, especially after it turned out that Dude is connected with this situation. He was usually my assistant at such times, but now I had to think carefully about my next steps. I've already contacted him and asked his team to check Apex's finances, but now I regret letting him know about my suspicions. Fortunately, I refrained from mentioning the hacking of the car. Neither he nor Gina knew that I was aware, at least at that moment. I put on a mask that night. Gina and I had dinner at the Andante restaurant, enjoying delicious food and a bottle of fine wine. Despite my excitement, I tried to look interested and present. I smoothly kept up the conversation while Gina casually took off her shoe and ran her foot over my leg under the table. I responded to her gesture with a smile and a few gentle caresses. Anticipating that the evening would end with physical exercises in bed, as was customary with Gina after a hearty dinner and wine, I considered my next steps. I could reflect on the dilemma without being distracted from work, for example, while enjoying dinner with my wife. The next morning, when I woke up, I developed a clear plan of action in connection with the mysterious assassination attempt and the suspicious role of my wife in it. I got up early and started preparing for a hasty trip to Los Angeles. After packing my suitcase for the night, I instructed the company's travel agent to arrange my usual 3-day round trip and book a room at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel, my usual place of residence in Los Angeles. I called a limo to take me to the airport, had a quick breakfast, and then woke Gina up in the bedroom. I apologized to her. "I'm sorry to bother you, baby." She slowly opened her eyes, and I was delighted to see her beautiful face as she smiled back at me. "Good morning, Alex," she greeted me. "I have to go to Los Angeles, dear," I said, explaining that I had received several emails about the unexpected meeting. "I need to be there for a couple of days." It was a lie, but it was very convincing. I was often on the road. I often had to go on business trips when necessary. "Well, darling, I will definitely warm the bed for you," my wife said. "Will you be back on Friday?" "Yes, that's what we're planning," I replied. "Just make sure you're the only one warming the bed, okay, Gina?" She giggled and hugged me tightly. "There's no one here but me, baby," she assured him. Sitting in the limo, I couldn't stop wondering that my wife could cheat on me. Maybe I was wrong, and she had nothing to do with the attempt on my life. She was an exceptional actress, but also a ruthless creature. I was afraid to be right, but it was impossible to be wrong. While the plane was flying from San Jose to Los Angeles, I was developing my plan. The crucial element was the preservation of absolute secrecy. Since Jeff was potentially involved in the situation, I had to be careful not to warn him of my doubts. As the leading security expert in the Bay Area, I knew I had to bring in someone from outside the area. Arriving at the airport, I decided to take a taxi and went to an electronics store to buy a used cell phone for cash. After checking into the Beverly Wilshire Hotel, I contacted Dan Cameron and arranged to meet for lunch at his office downtown. Dan was an important part of my team when I founded Apex. and we both achieved great success. Although we broke up amicably 3 years ago, I couldn't wait to meet him. Dan and his family moved to Los Angeles and got a successful job at a financial services company, where his mind contributed to prosperity. Dan and I meet several times a year, so it wasn't unusual for me to pay him a visit. We chatted over sandwiches and beer on the outdoor patio at the restaurant, exchanging stories from the past and news about our lives. Dan asked about Gina, shared details about his wife Linda and their children. When we finished eating, I leaned over to him and touched on a more serious topic. "Dan, if you don't mind, I want to ask you a couple of favors," I said, catching his interest, and he continued. "I suspect there may be security issues in Apex. Do you have a reliable security company that you could recommend?" "Absolutely," he replied. "I trust Vertex Securities. Alan Newman, her supervisor, is an expert in this field." "But you still have Jeff Denham, right?" he asked. "Yes, but I need an outside look," I explained. "That's what I need you to do first. Contact Newman and let him know that a close friend would like to talk to him on the phone to get advice without revealing my identity." Dan called his friend on his cell phone and made an appointment for the next day. "Thanks, Dan. I need you to pretend that nothing happened," I said before asking him a question about Gina. Dan hesitated, avoiding my gaze and blushing. After a moment, he met my gaze with a guilty expression I'd never seen before. "It's hard for me, Alex. It's a little awkward. I really hope you don't want to hit me," Dan said nervously. "It was about 4 years ago, in the last months before I left the post of chief operating officer and moved here, when Gina flirted with me several times. It wasn't just innocent banter, as attractive women often do. Several times she came close to actually asking me out." Dan seemed to sense my surprise and quickly raised his hands in a defensive gesture, as if afraid that I might hit him. "Alex, it wasn't clear. She never asked directly, 'Do you want to take me to bed?' or something like that. She hinted at it, but always subtly, leaving room for interpretation. The offer was made, but by pretending to be ignorant, we could both avoid awkwardness. That's why I've never brought this up with you. It was a confusing situation for me, and I didn't want to upset you, myself, or her by trying to explain something so incomprehensible." "I was afraid you'd think I'd made it up," he confessed, sitting with a pained expression on his face. "I think I understand everything, Dan, and I'm not mad at you. You just ignored subtle hints, and eventually she stopped following you." "Yes, that's right. It lasted for several weeks and then abruptly stopped." Gina returned to her usual friendly, slightly flirtatious lifestyle. It was weird, like she was testing me somehow. "Was there anything else? Have you noticed any other unusual behavior?" He nodded with a displeased expression. "It's actually much worse, Alex. Right after we moved in, Linda mentioned to me that she had a farewell dinner with Barbara Daniels, Josh's wife. Barbara looked very upset and confessed to Linda that she suspected Josh of cheating on her, possibly with Gina. Josh, who had worked at Apex for 7 years, was now our CFO. I leaned closer, intrigued. How did Barbara come to this conclusion? She wasn't sure. She didn't have concrete evidence. She discovered that Josh lied to her several times about where he was, and also committed other suspicious acts that led her to believe that he was unfaithful. As for Gina, everything was not so clear here. Maybe one day he came home smelling of her perfume, but she couldn't remember all the details. He and Linda discussed together whether to tell her about their suspicions. She knew that if the situation had changed, she would have wanted her friends to tell her about her partner's infidelity. But in the end, the whole situation seemed trivial and unimportant to her. "I hope I wasn't mistaken, but I didn't want to put your marriage in danger because of something that may never have happened." After our conversation, we said goodbye, and I didn't dislike Dan at all. It was obvious that he thought he was doing the right thing. But his stories only fueled the idea that my wife was involved in a conspiracy against me and my business. When I talked to Alan Newman on the phone, I didn't waste any time and got straight to the point. I need a reliable security company to help me in a delicate matter. Despite the fact that Dan highly appreciated your services, I hesitate to involve anyone associated with me or my partners. Therefore, I want to get recommendations from other highly qualified specialists in this field. Who would you personally recommend to solve a very confidential issue that requires financial and computer knowledge? After a little thought, Newman suggested, first of all, I would turn to Barry Asimov in San Diego. His firm has collaborated with mine on various projects, and he is known for his exceptional intelligence. He's known for hiring talented people and rewarding them well, and I've always had confidence in him. At my request, Newman ended the conversation and connected me with Asimov, setting up a meeting the next morning at 10 o'clock in the morning and without revealing my identity. Back at the hotel, I called Dan Cameron again. I asked him to use his credit card to rent a car from Hertz and arranged with his assistant Elliot to pick up the car from the airport the next morning. That way, the car will be at my disposal and I won't leave any traces. After a late conversation with Gina, I went upstairs to sleep. The next morning I had breakfast in my room and then changed into casual clothes, sweatpants, sunglasses, and a San Francisco Giants baseball cap. I left the hotel through the side entrance and hailed a taxi to the Hertz office at Los Angeles Airport. By 9:45, I arrived in San Diego and parked in the parking lot next to Asimov's office. Barry Asimov, a man in his 40s, greeted me. He was short, overweight, and had an unattractive hairstyle. At first glance, he looked unremarkable in an ill-fitting brown suit, but 10 minutes later, I discovered that he was one of the smartest people I had come across in recent times. Realizing that I needed to share my secret with someone, I chose Asimov. Without hesitation, I went up to him and immediately got down to business. Mr. Asimov, I need a security firm to perform a difficult and very confidential task. It involves extensive high-tech computer work and is not your standard case. I am ready to offer generous compensation for the necessary work, including covering all expenses incurred by your team. The project may last several weeks, and I assume that your fee may amount to a significant amount. He looked at me thoughtfully for a moment. What made you turn to us for services, and why do you think we can handle this task? I was referred to Alan Newman, who spoke highly of your abilities. Why not go directly to Newman, given his experience? I try to maintain anonymity and confidentiality in this matter. Once we solve this mystery, you'll understand why I have to be careful. Newman contacted you without knowing my identity, so no one will be able to connect me with you. Although it's not impossible, it won't be easy. After discussing the initial preparations, Asimov suggested, "Tell us a story. If it seems feasible to you, then we will come to an agreement." I talked about my personality, activities, and values of Apex, as well as about the recent attempt on my life. I informed him of my suspicions about Gina and Jeff's involvement and explained my reasons. I also talked about Gina's behavior and her potential affair with Josh Daniels, without naming the source of the information. Asimov asked me some clarifying questions, demonstrating his competence in this matter. Then he leaned back in his chair and mentioned that he was aware of Jeff Denham's reputation as a highly respected figure in Silicon Valley. Many representatives of the technology industry speak highly of his work. If he is indeed engaged in questionable activities, we must investigate with caution. Asimov proposed a plan. We need to thoroughly examine all your financial records, internal documents, and communications, as well as check the background of Jeff, your wife, and other Apex top managers. Asimov recommended that his best computer expert, David Carlos, be involved in the investigation. David has a team of financial analysts who will be able to analyze the data obtained and assess possible offenses. Anderson was tasked with assembling a surveillance team for the next phase of the case. Half an hour later, the four of us gathered in the conference room, ate takeaway sandwiches, and discussed my predicament. Asimov took a back seat, leaving Carlos and Anderson to conduct the interrogation. But from time to time, he joined in the conversation, showing off his sharp mind and assuring me that I was in good hands. By the middle of the day, I headed back to Los Angeles. I felt relieved that Asimov understood my financial difficulties and agreed to act on the basis of an invoice notarized in his office. Carlos planned to access Apex through my computer, which was connected to other important computers of the company. His strategy was simple. He told me to memorize the URL of Asimov's website. Whenever I was alone in my office for 2 hours or longer, I would go to the website, download a program from it, and install it on my computer. With this program, Carlos and his team could download and duplicate any files from my computer and all devices connected to it. Before leaving the office, I always disconnected from the network, logged off the site, deleted the program from the computer, and erased all evidence, clearing the browser history. Although this method was unreliable, only an experienced specialist who already suspected and carefully examined my computer could have detected their actions. Carlos expects that by devoting 20 hours to exploring the internet, he will gather all the necessary information to determine if there are any problems with Apex. Meanwhile, Anderson's duties usually include overseeing Gina and Apex's senior management. It was decided not to set up surveillance on Jeff, since his experience in the security service would most likely warn him of any suspicious activity. Nevertheless, a thorough investigation of telephone conversations and financial transactions was conducted from a safe distance. I made it clear to them that keeping Jeff in the dark was extremely important. I stressed that he is very smart, and any attempts to monitor him or tap his phone, home, or office would be risky. Most likely, he will understand everything quickly. Anderson understood me and suggested installing audio and video recordings in the house, putting a bug in Gina's purse and listening to her mobile phone. We agreed that I would inform them when the house was vacant in order to proceed with the implementation of the plan. She assured her team that they would get the job done in less than 3 hours. First of all, they had to thoroughly comb the house in search of surveillance equipment that Jeff could install. As for Gina's personal belongings, I gave them the address of her tennis club. Anderson confidently stated that it would be easier to crack the lock of Gina's locker, check for bugs in her purse and phone, and install our own. In this case, my role was simple: to return home and act as if everything was fine. I had to keep going about my daily business at work and at home without relaxing my vigilance. Asimov was sure that whoever tried to kill me would hesitate before trying again. Most likely, they will want to make sure that all evidence of their first attempt has been destroyed by targeting your Lexus. In a few days, we need to gather enough information to better understand the situation. Therefore, Alex, it is important that you do not take unnecessary risks. Avoid trips to the forest or unfamiliar places, and try not to drive alone. Perhaps as a precaution, you will ask Gina to take you to work. But there's no reason to worry right now. I gave him a sarcastic smile. That's easy for you to say, Barry, but I will do my best to be careful. Before I left, we developed a communication plan. She was supposed to go only one way from me to Asimov. I continued to use my old mobile phones. When I had the opportunity to call, I dialed the number and asked for Larry Asimov. The receptionist kindly pointed out my mistake and put me through to Barry. We agreed that I would try to call at least once every 2 days. After dinner at the Beverly Wilshire, I called Gina to tell her I was coming home soon. She expressed her loneliness and the cold of our empty bed, to which I assured her that I would warm her up upon arrival on Thursday. Concluding the conversation, I couldn't help but think about the absurdity of my wife's alleged plan to harm me. Before this ordeal, I had always considered Gina to be an amazing, brave, and life-loving woman. Although she showed narcissistic tendencies and might seem a little cold, she was not the type to break hearts or rescue stray cats. She was always focused on herself, especially on Gina. It was obvious that she cared about me in her own way, although she was not the most affectionate wife. Similarly, I have not always been the most loving husband. Our relationship was not filled with cozy evenings by the fireplace or romantic walks on the beach, except for the rare, passionate moments during our trips to the Caribbean. In the evenings, we enjoyed going to dinner and visiting the casino. We were both purposeful and collected people. Despite the fact that Gina was unemployed, she continued to actively engage in her favorite activities, playing tennis, shopping, and chatting with friends. Gina expressed her love for me in her own way. I believed that she loved me as deeply as her nature allowed. That level of affection was enough for me. I found comfort and satisfaction in our life together. All previous assumptions were now uncertain. The idea that she might be trying to harm me was disturbing, but the evidence seemed to confirm it. The motive was obvious. Money. According to Dan Cameron, she was involved with two of my colleagues, Josh Daniels and Jeff Denham. If my suspicions were correct, she was a cruel, heartless monster. When I thought about Gina being involved with Daniels, trying to lure Dan Cameron, and potentially being involved with Jeff, it occurred to me that she might be the mastermind behind all this. Throughout the flight to San Jose, I couldn't get rid of thoughts about how events would develop. I thought I had enough acting skills to fool Gina for a while if necessary. If she really cheats on me, then I will take it as a challenge to match her cunning. But if my doubts turned out to be unfounded, I was ready to accept her love back into my life with open arms. If she was guilty of an attempt on my life, then I already had plans for how I wanted to resolve this situation, and part of me was looking forward to it. Our reunion with Gina on Thursday night was fantastic for several reasons. The intimacy was incredible, and she even ordered my favorite Chinese food. More importantly, the evening passed off casually, without a hint of guilt, worry, or wariness on Gina's part, despite my close observation. As usual, she talked about her recent 6-4 victory over Sharon Combs in the third set, her excitement about finding the perfect pair of shoes in the wrong color, and other mundane details. I was sure she was unaware of my suspicions. When I arrived at the office on Friday, I found that Jeff Denham had already called and informed me about his upcoming visit. This did not come as a surprise to me, since I assumed that he would come to deliver the results of the audit that I had requested. I was also sure that he would be interested to know the reason for my request. Jeff came into the room with a grin, greeted me with a handshake, and asked me how I liked Los Angeles. I couldn't help but wonder how he knew about my last-minute visit. Perhaps Gina had mentioned it to him, but I decided not to arouse suspicion by questioning him. Besides, he could easily check the details with Meredith by calling the office. "Hi, dude," I replied with a smile, assuring him that everything was going well in Los Angeles. Jeff thought he had a potential lead on a new account for me, but I'm not sure it would come true. Still, it was nice to meet him. "Have you come to inform me about the results of your team's work?" He sat down in the chair opposite my desk. "Yes, everything was normal," he began. "We found some minor accounting errors, which I have already passed on to Poe Grebin downstairs. But no signs of suspicion, missing funds, new beneficiaries, or traces of external interference have been found." "Why did you ask me to do an audit, Alex?" Jeff asked, trying to appear impassive. I was ready for this question, and was ready to give a far-fetched answer. I thought it was a minor matter until Bert Williamson from 2 to 2 called me on Monday. One of his vice presidents attended a meeting in New York, where one of the employees mentioned rumors that one of the software companies in Silicon Valley was in danger. The information was murky and concerned allegations of fake subsidiaries and suspicious money transfers. Although it seemed suspicious, I haven't asked to check our accounts for a long time, so I decided to continue. "Sorry for the inconvenience, but it's important to be aware." He smiled, looking more at ease. "Don't worry, that's exactly what we're here for," he assured. After a short conversation, he left, and I immediately went to Carlos's website, downloaded and installed the program, and began to study Apex's financial records and communications. To give them extra time, I asked Meredith to order lunch and planned to eat at my table. She kindly brought me the San Jose Mercury News, which I hadn't had time to read before. While I was enjoying my meal, an article on the Metro page caught my attention. It reported a fire in an auto repair shop that destroyed 12 cars. The fire started in the back parking lot of Marshall Motors, and according to police, its cause has not yet been determined. A dozen cars were completely destroyed, and another 6 to 8 were damaged. I was not too surprised by this news. I had a feeling that someone would steal my Lexus, but I never expected it to be burned to the ground. In a way, it was even better, because it was unclear which car was the target. I called Dominic, choosing my words carefully, as Barry and I suspected that dude might have bugged my office. "Hi, Dominic. I just read an article in the Mercury News. Are you okay?" "Yes, Alex. Thank you." It was already 10 o'clock in the evening, and the office was empty. "If you are calling about your Lexus, then I have sad news for you. It has been recognized as completely lost. Don't worry, Dominic. That's what insurance is for. Can I stop by your place after work today to chat?" We agreed that he would wait for me until 6 in the evening before we finished our conversation. I didn't think that the surveillance cameras at Marshall Motors would show anything unusual, but I planned to ask Asimov's team to review the recordings to make sure of it. I was glad that Dominic wrote a report on the brake line and took photos. Whoever deliberately set fire to my car was clearly experienced in his malicious business. Dominic took me around the station while the police and the arson investigation team collected evidence, and left. "They think it's suspicious," he said, "but I don't think they'll be able to definitively prove it." While we were examining the aftermath, Dominic noticed the charred remains of an old Ford truck parked next to my Lexus. It turned out that there was a gasoline leak from the truck, which caused a devastating fire. "The explosion set the neighboring cars on fire," he explained, gesturing at the wreckage. We were in a deserted parking lot, away from witnesses, so I asked quietly, "Do we have surveillance footage taken last night?" "Yes, there are recordings from 2 different cameras, but the police confiscated them," he replied. "I thought you might want to take a look at them, so I made duplicates for you. They are in my office in a drawer with coffee filters." "Thank you, Dominic. And now I have one more request for you." I asked Dominic to postpone sending the surveillance footage and the initial report on the car to Barry Asimov's office until Monday. I made sure that he remembered the address by repeating it several times and left the rented car with Dominic, deciding to use a taxi service for now. By choosing taxis in different places and acting spontaneously, I minimized the risk of falling into a trap. Just 2 minutes later, I was on the phone with Barry Asimov. There weren't many things happening at the moment. Carlos deleted a lot of files from my computer, but it took him a few more hours to finish downloading. I agreed to make an effort to visit the office over the weekend. Anderson's team thoroughly checked my house for bugs, but found none. Instead, they installed their own bugs. In addition, they managed to crack the password to Gina's computer and copy her files, although they had not yet viewed them. They were ready to search Gina's purse the next time she went out to play tennis. I informed him about the fire at Marshall Motors and assured him that he would receive the records and report in a few days. We decided that I would call him early next week. The next 2 days passed without incident, almost surreal in their ordinariness. Gina and I followed our usual daily routine. We slept well on Saturday, enjoyed morning intimacy, and then Gina cooked scrambled eggs and bacon for breakfast. Making breakfast was the only thing she liked to do, so in the evenings we usually had dinner at a restaurant or asked Carmelita to cook for us. We were sitting at the table, playfully feeding each other and laughing. It was a good way to make sure she didn't ruin the food. After lunch, we visited our clubhouse where I played golf with my regular band, and Gina chatted with her friends by the pool. We stayed for dinner on the terrace with our friends Sam and Ashley, and then returned home for another intimate moment. The next day, we went our separate ways. I told Gina that I would have to work in the office part of the day. This often happens. I asked for a ride and went to the club to play a game of tennis. I used my old cell phone to contact Barry, who assured me that Anderson would send his operative to the locker room while Gina was busy. I logged in, started the program, and let Carlos get to work. In the midst of all this, I wondered why I wasn't even more angry. It seemed like my wife and best friend were conspiring against me, and Gina seemed to enjoy hanging out with Josh Daniels. Despite the betrayal, I couldn't express the expected rage. All I could say was that I still don't have all the facts. After learning that revenge is best served cold, I decided out of curiosity to do a little research on the internet. To my surprise, I discovered that this phrase was coined by a man named Pierre-Ambroise François Chaudelot de Laclos in the 18th century. Even though I felt betrayed and angry, I made a conscious effort to keep these emotions in a corner of my mind. I didn't want to waste time feeling sorry for Gina or Dudell, because I knew I could easily take revenge when the time came, but I vowed to remain calm until I had concrete evidence before allowing myself to lose control. Around 4:30, Gina picked me up, having just finished a day of tennis, swimming, and showering. We decided to have a bite of Indian food and have a quiet dinner at home. Surprisingly, none of us felt the desire to enter into an intimate relationship, so before going to bed, we decided to watch several episodes of The Sopranos, which we recorded on TiVo. It was a weekend that seemed strangely ordinary to us, unlike the ones we had spent before. The following Monday also passed without incident. I was just working in my office. When I was installing the software for David Carlos to complete the download, I contacted Barry on Tuesday afternoon, sitting in the back booth of a downtown bar. To my surprise, I found out that his team had made significant progress. "I have important information that I want to share with you, Alex. Firstly, your car was indeed set on fire intentionally, as we assumed. The perpetrators were experienced people, 2 men dressed in black wearing ski masks, which did not allow us to identify them. They made a small hole in the gas tank of your Ford. After pouring gasoline under the Lexus, they lit a match and fled the scene of the crime. There was a fear that Dominic's photographs and documents could serve as evidence of an attempt on life. Although they can convince the police of foul play, linking them to Jeff or your wife without additional evidence may not be an easy task." After a short pause, I expressed my gratitude and asked for any additional information I received, including the completion of the computer analysis conducted by David. His financial team believes that they have managed to make a breakthrough, but they need another day or two to confirm. It turns out that over the past 8 months, funds have been illegally withdrawn from a shell subsidiary established just over a year ago. About $2 million were withdrawn before the operation was quietly terminated. David is confident that he will be able to track transactions to a specific computer in the office if additional time is required. Although the possibility of a refund cannot be guaranteed, it seems unlikely. The most effective course of action would be to identify the perpetrator, report him to the authorities, and demand the return of the stolen money. If the criminal has already spent the money, there is a high probability that he will not be able to return it. Although the thought of losing $2 million was disturbing, it wasn't enough to financially ruin me or my company. But the principle behind the theft made me very angry. Despite this, I realized that losing money is much less difficult than committing murder. Going further, I asked about Gina's situation and whether Anderson's team had managed to fix any errors on her computer and access her files. He cleared his throat before answering. "Alex, the situation doesn't look positive," Barry said. "I have to be honest with you. It seems likely that she was involved with 2 of the 3 Apex guys you mentioned, Josh Daniels and Eddie Kreitler. In addition, she called Jeff from her cell phone on Sunday, which indicates a romantic relationship with him." I sighed. The news was not entirely unexpected, but it was still a harsh reality that had to be accepted immediately. Barry's voice interrupted my dark thoughts. "Can we have a few extra days to sort things out? The Anderson team is now monitoring Gina's mobile phone, the bug in her purse, and the bugs in your house. They are also examining her phone records and credit cards. It turns out that she had 2 cards in her maiden name, and the bills were coming to her mailbox. Did you know about this?" I replied with a firm no, unfortunately, still feeling a little depressed. "Alex, I understand that this is a difficult situation. Can you bear it a little longer and stay calm until we're done?" I know I have to do this, Barry, so I guess that's how it's going to be. Do you think they'll come after me again? After a short silence, he replied, Maybe, but they will proceed cautiously, as the recent news about your car is still fresh. They will want to avoid any connections. If you take the necessary precautions, avoid secluded places and similar situations, you will be safe. Should I assign someone from the staff to keep an eye on you? No. There's a big risk that Jeff's people will figure it out. I need to give preference to my own well-being. I'll call you on Thursday, he said. He apologized with rare gentleness. I'm really sorry, Alex. I replied, Yes, me too, and then ended the conversation. Wednesday was probably the most miserable day of my adult life. I knew that my marriage was ending, that my best friend from school, whom I trusted immensely, was having fun with my wife, and that one or both of them intended to harm me. I had a burden on me that I couldn't get rid of, and I had no one to rely on. I wandered aimlessly around the office, feigning productivity and engaging in small talk with Meredith. My mind was preoccupied with thoughts of revenge, the details of which depended on the conclusions of Barry and his team. Despite the uncertainty, the overall plan was already forming in my head. With each passing moment, my anger and sense of betrayal grew, spurring anticipation of what lay ahead. On Thursday afternoon, I postponed the call to Asimov until late in the evening so that his team would have enough time to prepare. After the haircut at 4 o'clock, I decided not to return to the office, but to go to the diner. Having settled down at a table in the back of the establishment with a cup of coffee, I finally called. Barry and I had a long conversation that lasted almost an hour. I asked a lot of questions, confirmed my understanding of his explanations, and discussed various possibilities with him. After we completed the task, he wished me luck, and we said goodbye. Armed with everything I needed, I was ready for further action. That evening, as in the previous ones, I staged a performance for Gina at home, treating her with the usual care and tenderness. I'm not going to pretend that I'm a more skilled liar or actor than she is, but I did it. We were having dinner with fried chicken cooked by Carmelita, watching a movie on TV, and then it dawned on me that this might be the last time I would be intimate with Gina. This may be the last time I touch her at all. I left early on Friday so I wouldn't have to see Gina anymore, and I had a quick breakfast on the way to the office. I decided to take Gina's BMW convertible, being sure that her car was in good condition and wanting to get to work safely. Although I knew that Gina would be upset when she realized that her car was not there, I was sure that she would quickly cope with this inconvenience. When Meredith arrived at 9 o'clock, I called her into my office, greeted her with a good morning, and handed her the prepared list. It was clear that I would have to adjust my plans for the day. I asked her to prepare everything for me. When she looked at my list, her eyes widened. She looked up at me, obviously waiting for an explanation, but I didn't say anything. After a moment, she nodded and said, "Okay, boss, I'll take care of it." I smiled when she left the office. The rest of the morning passed without incident, except for a meeting with Nancy Liggett scheduled for 10 o'clock. Nancy was the principal of Leggett and Hine High School. I've known Nancy for about 6 years, ever since her PR company started working with Apex. Over time, she became not only a business partner for me, but also a good friend. Nancy was a charming, professional woman about my age, with a quick mind and a great sense of humor. If I wasn't married to Gina, I would even consider asking her out. We sat in my office and talked in raised tones while Beethoven and Strauss were playing on the radio. To keep our conversation confidential, I asked Meredith to bring me a sandwich and soda, which I enjoyed eating at my desk while watching the news. The riots were supposed to start that day at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Meredith called and informed me that Jeff Denham wanted to meet with me immediately. I chuckled to myself and replied, "Tell him I can't meet or talk to him at the moment, Meredith. He can meet me at 4, as planned." Had Jeff somehow managed to eavesdrop in my office? If so, an hour of loud music during my meeting with Nancy Liggett would certainly have aroused his suspicions. Perhaps he suspected something else. Perhaps he was eavesdropping on Meredith's phone conversations or meetings, listening to her plans for the day that I assigned her to lead. Anyway, I knew he was going crazy, and the thought gave me pleasure. Wait, asshole, it's going to get worse soon. I entered the conference room a few minutes before 1 o'clock and saw that everything was arranged exactly as I indicated. The spacious desk was empty, except for the company's laptop, which stood at one end, turned on, and ready to work. There was a video camera on a tripod at the opposite end of the room, and one of our technicians was standing behind it, ready to start shooting. "Hello," I greeted. "That's Arthur, right?" His grin widened as he admitted he was remembered. "Yes, Mr. McMillan, I am Arthur Widener. Everything is prepared and ready to work. Would you prefer me to stay and control the camera, or would you like a demonstration?" "Just show me, please, Arthur. I want you to film the meetings that I will be holding here all day." He installed partitions in the part of the room where my guests and I were sitting, and we conducted a short 30-second test. Everything worked flawlessly. "The film cartridge is designed for 6 hours, so you should be ready, Mr. McMillan," Arthur said before leaving. I expressed my gratitude to him when he left. I fiddled with my laptop for a bit, then activated the screensaver and leaned back in my chair. A few minutes later, Josh Daniels knocked on the door and cautiously entered. "The event has finally started." I asked with a friendly smile, "Is it okay if we record a meeting?" He looked worried and confused. "Alex, what's the matter?" I assured him. "We'll discuss this in a minute. Did you understand the message that Meredith gave you? I stressed that this meeting is strictly confidential. Can I count on you to keep it to yourself and not discuss it with anyone at Apex, either now or in the future?" He shrugged, still feeling awkward. "Yes, of course, Alex. You're the boss." "Is everything okay with filming?" I asked. "I think so," he replied. But before he could continue, I interrupted him. "Wait a second, Josh. Everything will be clear in a few minutes." I leaned back in my chair, keeping an indifferent expression on my face and watching his confusion. Finally, I spoke. "Josh, I know about your relationship with my wife." His reaction was instantaneous. He became visibly agitated, trying to pretend to be calm. His gaze couldn't stay on me while I was looking at him. He was constantly wandering over my face. "Alex, I don't know. What are you talking about?" Josh stuttered. I didn't need him to act innocent. The evidence was right in front of me. With a sense of conviction, I lied, patting the thick manila folder on the table. "But now I want to hear the truth from you. You have serious problems, and they will only get worse if you don't confess." I've been through a lot of difficult negotiations in my business career, but at that moment, I had never seen such an unhappy employee as Josh seemed to be. It seemed to me that I was enjoying his discomfort, looking forward to his attempts to get out of the situation in which he found himself. Finally, after a moment of silence, Josh plucked up the courage to speak. "Alex, can we please turn off the camera?" I declined his request, urging him to continue. "I'm waiting," I said. "When did it start and how did it happen? How can you justify having a secret affair with your boss's wife for several months?" He refused to meet my gaze, focusing on the table in front of him. "It all started about 4 years ago and lasted about 3 months. I'm sure you already know the details. The initiator of all this was Gina. It was a case of pure seduction. Linda and I have known each other for quite a long time, and she has always been a bit of a flirt. With a body like hers, who can resist?" He stopped abruptly, feeling a shiver run down his spine at the realization of how his words would sound. I waited patiently for him to finally speak again. "One day at a Christmas party in an ancient ballroom, she flirted with me quite openly. It was clear that she was interested, but I was skeptical. 2 weeks later, when you were in Chicago, she called me and invited me to her house. When I arrived, she presented me with something unexpected. I was at a loss. I tried to leave, I really tried, but she insisted on dragging me inside and closing the door behind us. She stood in front of me and smiled mischievously. After she said something completely unexpected, she confessed, "I've wanted you for so long, Josh, and now I finally have you." I felt a pang of guilt, Alex, genuine remorse. I know I was reckless, but at the age of 38, I've never met a woman as captivating as Gina. Although I knew it was inappropriate, I let it happen. No amount of persuasion could convince me to leave. Taking my hand, she led me into the bedroom where we were passionately engaged in this for 2 hours. Josh sat hunched over, staring at the floor in a state of utter defeat. The duration and resolution of his suffering remained uncertain. And then, out of the blue, she announced that she had reached the limit without showing any sympathy. Josh believed that this was because he refused to comply with her wishes. Curious, I asked what exactly her requirements were. For the first time during our conversation, Josh raised his head and met my gaze, finally getting the opportunity to answer my question directly. She asked me to create fake accounts to steal money from Apex. It was all about money, Alex, and nothing else. She mentioned your millions, and that she wants to get the most for herself. She questioned me in detail, even after we became close, about our accounting processes, the feasibility of creating fake accounts, and the risks involved. At first, I dismissed her as a prankster, but she persisted. In the end, I made it clear to her that I would not participate in her venture. He sat down in an armchair and looked into my eyes. "I have to be honest with you, Alex. I can't lie anymore. I didn't refuse because of any moral principles or loyalty to you or Apex. I desperately wanted to be with Gina. I was ready for anything. But the risk of being caught was too great, and I couldn't accept the thought of going to jail, even for her sake. When Gina realized that I couldn't go through with it, she ended our relationship. It was for the best, especially since Barbara was sure that I was cheating on her. It was over before she could collect the evidence. I have repeatedly denied this, making up excuses and insisting that these are just additional work projects. Although she looked skeptical, she eventually dropped the subject. I did my best to make amends, and fortunately we are still together." We sat in silence for a few minutes, thinking about the new information Josh had shared. Barry's team found evidence of an affair. After reviewing a series of paired letters between them, they were able to determine the exact dates of their communication. Nevertheless, Josh's revelation that Gina was the initiator of their affair was a shocking new development, as was her alleged plan to steal money from the company. I stood up and addressed Josh in an authoritative tone, firing him for the weekend and ordering him not to return to the office and not to discuss our conversation with anyone. My words were firm and unwavering as I made my expectations clear. "Yes, Alex," Josh replied meekly, sensing the gravity of the situation. There was defeat and fear in his voice. That is me. "We'll discuss this on Monday, Josh. In the meantime, just go home to Barbara and the kids," I said. My conversation with Eddie Kreitler at 1:30 in the morning went like this. Eddie rose through the ranks at Apex, supervised global sales and marketing, and then became my second assistant as director of operations. According to phone records and emails, Gina chose him shortly after breaking up with Josh. It's been more than 6 months since they started talking about it. Eddie, who was now single, no longer felt the need to be as careful as before. Gina gradually began to talk about the thefts in the company, not wanting to bother him. Eddie explained that it all started as a joke between them, but gradually turned into a serious proposal from Gina. He mentioned that he had considered various options, but none of them seemed feasible to him without putting him in too much danger. To be honest, Alex, the reason I didn't go for it is because the company is working efficiently. We have strict financial controls, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. When I finally trusted Gina, she wasn't listening to me anymore. Nevertheless, my conversation with Bernard Eisenhart, the treasurer of Apex, went in a completely unexpected direction. When I told him about his relationship with my wife, he stared at me blankly. His expression was surprised, but it didn't seem to bother him at all. "What are you talking about, Alex?" he asked. I handed him the manila folder. "It's useless to deny it," I said. He looked a little annoyed. "I do not know what you have there, Alex, but if this is what I think it is, then you should discuss it with Gina, not with me." I turned away and left. I trusted him. My disappointment was palpable, and Barry informed me that there was no evidence linking him and Gina, except for one phone call from her to him. "Okay, Bernard, I trust you. Could you explain what happened?" He was still angry. "She invited me, Alex. She lied to me about the surprise party just to see what you like. It didn't make any sense to me. When I arrived, she was wearing a transparent nightgown that barely covered her hips, as can be seen in the photos. She pulled me inside, kissed me, and tried to kiss me. I'm sure you can see it all in the photos." What happened after that? I informed her that I couldn't take any action against her because she was married to my boss. Then I unlocked the door and went to my car. I got in, waited for my excitement to subside, and only then drove away. I didn't see the need to tell you, Alex, since nothing happened, and I was afraid that you would blame me and not Gina. So I decided to leave it as it is, and now you're accusing me of it. Bernard's voice became even more angry, and I intervened in the conversation, urging him to calm down and give me an opportunity to clarify the situation. I recently found out that Gina cheated on me with at least 2 other colleagues at the company, and now I'm trying to understand the full scale of the situation. I trust you. I believe there was nothing inappropriate between you and her." His anger dissipated and he was stunned. 2 more employees? That's right. He sat down in the chair again. Come to think of it, there were rumors about her and Josh a couple of years ago. I brushed them off at the time, thinking it was just gossip because of her attractiveness. After she suddenly rushed towards me, I couldn't help but wonder about her motives. Nevertheless, I quickly realized that it was not my place to interfere in my own affairs. We continued the conversation for a few more minutes, during which I assured him of my trust, confirmed that I had not accused him, and stressed the need for confidentiality. As soon as our conversation ended, he left the room. While I was thinking about our conversation, Meredith came into the conference room and informed me that Jeff was looking forward to seeing me outside. I remembered that I had asked her to make an appointment for 4 o'clock. He's on the verge of losing control of his bladder. He insists on meeting with you immediately, claiming that this is a matter of life and death. If it wasn't for the guards I posted outside the room at your request, he would have already broken in. What should I do with it? I chuckled. Give me 5 minutes and then you can let him in. I wanted to enjoy these 5 minutes before the upcoming confrontation. Finding out that your closest friend wants you dead is not an uncommon occurrence. When Jeff entered the conference room, he looked visibly agitated. He seemed to have drunk an excessive amount of espresso, although he tried to hide it. Hi, Alex. How are you? He asked with mock nonchalance, his voice noticeably higher than usual. Hi, Doodle. Thanks for coming. Would you like some coffee? I offered, but he refused. What kind of camera is this? He asked. I grinned and replied, I thought I should capture today's meetings. I hope you don't mind. He looked very worried, but all he could say was, No, not at all. What caused such concern? Meredith didn't tell me anything, and when I bumped into Bernard Eisenhart coming out of the elevator, he just nodded strangely as he continued on his way. I turned the laptop to face him and asked, Take a look. When he clicked on the built-in mouse, the screensaver disappeared. An image taken from a video recorded in my bedroom a week before showed a candid scene unfolding. Gina was lying on her back, and Jeff was giving her pleasure. Her head was thrown back in delight, and after a moment Jeff saw the picture with an expression of shock and realization. Without hesitation, I waited for him to speak, and then I delivered a powerful blow with my right fist to the eye, from which he flew back. His head collided with the carpet, causing the chair to easily come off the table. I loomed over him, taking off my bulky winter glove. Although the pain was still intense, I reassured myself that my knuckles were not broken. I sat down and rubbed my sore arm with a wry smile, patiently waiting for Jeff to come to his senses. It took several minutes before he finally stirred, let out a groan, and reached for his face. When his vision cleared, he looked at me and then hurriedly stepped back and leaned against the wall. The man looked both confused and wary. "Do you want more, you disgusting freak?" "I can still hit you with my other hand," he said in his usual, almost dismissive tone. "No way, Alex." I saw him glance towards the door, trying to figure out if he would have time to escape or if I would catch him before. "Forget about it, Doodle. Those two guards are still there. You're not leaving yet." We stood in silence. I watched him, and his expression was clouded with thought. It was clear that he hoped that I would not be privy to all the details of his predicament, but his hopes were dashed. "Okay, dude, get up and take your place at the table again. Don't worry, I won't hurt you this time. What lies ahead of you will be much more painful," I announced. He obeyed carefully, choosing a chair at a safe distance from me and keeping his eyes on my face. "I won't waste any more time on you, a worthless reason for friendship. My closest friend since high school," I spat out. "You're just a disgrace," I shouted at him. He was silent, encouraging me to continue. "Not only did you entertain my wife and try to steal my money, but you also plotted to kill me." At these words, he flinched, shock and fear reflected on his face. "I will make sure that you find new companions in prison." "Gina told me everything," I lied through my teeth. "I know that the theft and murder are all you're doing. Just being a cuckold didn't suit you, did it? Did you really think that by silencing me, you would somehow make up the full picture?" "For God's sake, Alex, that's not true." His voice was full of despair. "She's lying. I admit that I had a relationship with Gina. It's useless to deny it. Nevertheless, it was her idea to steal the money and then harm you. I have made countless attempts to convince her otherwise. And when that didn't help, you decided to go ahead and ruin my car, didn't you?" He avoided looking into my eyes, hanging his head. In the end, he opened up and shared everything with me. Their romance began the same way as the previous ones with Josh and Eddie, with the relentless pursuit of Gina. He insisted that he resisted her advances several times before giving up. But in the end, that detail didn't matter. After enjoying her company for several months, Gina started discussing the idea of stealing some of my money. Unlike his past partners in crime, Jeff was willing to take part in this scheme. He created a subsidiary and figured out how to transfer legitimate payments to various accounts. As the head of the security service, which also controlled the finance department, he skillfully prevented anyone from closely monitoring his actions. In just 7 months, he successfully embezzled about $1.5 million. This information was already known to Barry's team. Jeff, who now spoke openly and ignored the cameras, was determined to get his message across. She wasn't so heartless that she didn't feel remorse for her actions towards me. She stated that my wealth was not enough to satisfy her desires. It wasn't fair. In response, I closed the account and took measures to hide my actions. A month later, she started discussing plans to cause harm so that we could be together. She believed that with your funds, we could live luxuriously and without worries. Despite my objections, she remained adamant in her intentions. Every time we found ourselves in each other's company, she came up with a new plan for what she would do when she inherited your money after your death. And did you really believe her? He took a deep breath. I was a complete fool, Alex. I was fooling myself into thinking that she really cared about me. I was convinced that I was in love with her, or at least I thought I was. I held on for a long time until she started hinting that if I didn't comply with her demands, then our relationship would have no future. After several weeks of discussing the situation, I began to believe that this was my only way out. Jeff described Gina as a heartless creature. As soon as she got fixated on something, she relentlessly pursued that thought like a one-man terrier. Unable to get rid of this thought, I eventually contacted a person who had experience in such matters. This specialist assured me that with the right approach, Interference with the brake line can be easily carried out without arousing any suspicion. The tired look in his eyes spoke volumes. I understand that you will never be able to forgive me, and I don't blame you. It's hard for me to come to terms with my actions, too. It seemed to me that I was under some kind of influence, that Gina was controlling me, turning me into a little monster. Were you planning to try again? I already had an answer after watching the video that Asimov gave me. In a strained voice, he confessed what she wanted. I suggested waiting a few weeks so as not to arouse suspicion about the car. I tried my best to convince her otherwise, but she was relentless. He buried his face in his hands, defeated. Jeff was put to shame, resigned to his fate. I asked him about the missing money, and he immediately revealed the details of the 2 offshore accounts where he hid it. Gina had already spent most of the money, and there were about $60,000 left on it. It was already 3:30 when I handed Jeff over to the guards, who were supposed to detain him until the authorities arrived. After that, I returned to the conference room to wait for Gina to arrive at 5 o'clock. With each new revelation, the shocking and painful reality became deeper. My wife not only cheated on me and took my money, but also sought to ruin me. How could a reasonable loved one understand this betrayal? How could it be that I lived with this woman for more than 8 years, mostly content, unaware of her true nature? Gina entered the conference room. Gina arrived very late, looked immaculately stylish, and with a touch of irritation. "Honey, what's the matter? What's the matter?" she asked, clearly flustered by Meredith's mysterious challenge. She didn't give me any details about the reason for our meeting. Are there any problems with the company? And why did you leave me without a car this morning? Watching her, I realized that her annoyance was just a mask. Underneath it was Gina's genuine concern. It was obvious that he and Jeff were feverishly discussing the situation, trying to put together a puzzle. "Please, dear, have a seat. I need to talk to you about something that is very difficult for me." I sat in silence, pretending to be emotional, and watched Gina try to keep her composure. I was determined to enjoy every moment of this confrontation. There was a tense silence that made Gina's knees start to shake. Finally, I spoke. "Gina, I know you've been unfaithful to me. How could you betray my trust like that? I thought you cared about me." Gina tried to keep her composure, but her eyes widened and she visibly tensed. I noticed how quickly her expression changed. Sadness and sympathy were reflected in it. It happened almost instantly, as if she was anticipating this moment. "Baby, I'm really sorry. I never meant to hurt you. Simply, you've been away from home so often, and so have I." Her words were interrupted by tears. The emotions were genuine. Despite the tears, she reached out and took my hand. "Alex, is there any chance that you will find the strength in your heart to forgive me?" "I don't want to lose you," she whispered. "I just don't know." After a moment of silence, I plucked up the courage and asked her about it. "When did it start? How did it happen? And most importantly, why? Why did she do that?" Gina hesitated. Her eyes filled with sadness. "Baby, please don't make me talk about this," she begged. "But I know that in order to move on, we have to admit the truth. We can get through this," she assured. "I'll fix it. I will be the best, most perfect wife you can have." But I shook my head, and Gina started crying. "No, Gina," I said firmly. "If we can ever forget about this, you have to be honest with me. Tell me, when did it all start? How long has it been going on?" She was in my arms, and I was enjoying it. She didn't know which of her lovers I knew. I cunningly mentioned her affair in the past tense to confuse her and make her believe that it might not be Jeff, but someone else. Now she had to doubt herself, and if she was wrong, she would admit to an affair that I supposedly knew nothing about. She hesitantly began to speak. "I just felt so alone, Alex. You were always far away, and I felt abandoned. I know it's not fair. You've worked so hard and created a successful company for us. But I let him take matters into his own hands, and then after a few drinks, when he made a move, I just agreed." I chuckled to myself. Nice try, Gina. But you're not okay yet. When did this happen, Gina? I need to know, I said, abruptly getting up and walking around the table to hug her, tears in my eyes. Alex, I'm so sorry. But I held her at arm's length, looking into her eyes and asking. I saw calculation flash in her eyes before she sighed, sat down next to me and confessed. A little over 4 years ago. She made a bet on Josh Daniels. Grinning to myself, I couldn't help but find something funny about this situation. Nice try, Gina. It's a pity that you don't know that there is no right solution. She looked at me, and there was a hint of annoyance under the facade of sadness, but she knew she had no other choice. The situation lasted for several months. I'm not sure exactly why, Alex, but I lost control. I knew it was wrong, and in the end I had to admit to Joshua that I couldn't keep seeing him. It was destroying me. I cried throughout the whole ordeal, and the despair and fear in her widened eyes were obvious as she tried to explain. Baby, I don't understand. He's not the only one, Eddie Kreitler, I shouted. Did you sleep with 2 of my employees? What were you thinking? She tried to intervene to calm me down, but I was too worked up. Gina, for God's sake, how do we fix this? How can I trust you again? I can't get rid of the feeling that everyone at Apex is bullying me when the boss's wife takes care of the employees. Just follow the rules, and she'll get to you eventually. Who else did you talk to, the cleaning lady? No way, I promise it was only 2 employees. And why should I believe that? I doubted it. As far as I know, you were friends with everyone you met. Did you have a good time with Dan Cameron before he left? What about our friend Archie or Peter, Debbie's husband, or with a doodle? Gina took her chance and stood up, her expression becoming serious. She gently took both my hands and said in a solemn tone, Alex, I swear to you it was only those 2 times many years ago. I deeply regret this. Since then, I have been faithful to you, and I will be faithful to the end of my days. There was silence in the room, and I looked at her, feeling tired and sad. I was hiding a mixture of anger and satisfaction at knowing that her fate was sealed. All right, Gina, I said, deliberately calm. You admitted that you cheated on me with 2 of my colleagues, but then you stopped and decided to return to the role of a faithful wife. It's true? She nodded, a hint of optimism in her eyes. Well, I guess I need to ask you one more question, I said, pushing the laptop towards her. Can you guess what it is? By pressing 2 keys, I saw the screensaver disappear and the video starts playing. In the footage, Jeff was pleasuring Gina. She was arching her back with pleasure. Her voice was full of delight. To give Gina her due, she didn't recoil from the laptop like a snake, didn't try to run out of the room, and didn't even scream. Instead, she let out a quick sigh that was suppressed almost as soon as it started. After a short pause, she closed the laptop and looked at me. Just a few moments ago, her expression had changed, turning into something unusual. Now her face was tense and filled with anger, her eyes glittered with tension, and her mouth twisted into a forced smile. Okay, Alex, you've won. Congratulations. What do you want me to admit? Yes, I enjoyed my time with Doodle more than I ever have with you. Is that what you're looking for? I fired back, stunned by her confession. She froze, looking at me in confusion, before finally being able to say, What? I have no idea what you're talking about, she said. Really? I replied softly. I opened the computer, typed in a few keys, and turned it towards her. Our kitchen appeared on the screen where Gina and Jeff were sitting at the table, both in dressing gowns. Gina said, I don't care, Dudell. So we were unlucky and he survived. We can try again. Gina, you underestimate the danger. If someone starts investigating what happened, that's nonsense. The car was completely destroyed in the fire, as were several others. Who can suspect anything? We just need to find another way to get rid of him. Maybe I should poison him. I pressed the button and the computer went silent. I smiled at Gina. I wish I had this video, dear. Without her, it will be difficult to deny your involvement in this case in court. Gina's cold eyes bored into me as her thoughts raced. It seemed like she was trapped and desperately looking for a way out. There was no hint of remorse or warmth in her expression. When she finally spoke, there was contempt in her tone. "You wouldn't dare go to the police, Alex. It was a joke not only for you but also for Apex. Do the CEO and his wife entertain employees? You will become a laughingstock." She was sitting with a smug and satisfied expression on her face. I dialed Meredith's number and asked for Nancy Leggett. When she entered the room, she took a seat opposite Gina and me and looked at my wife contemptuously. "Gina believes that arresting her for grand theft and attempted murder will hurt me and the business. Why don't you repeat what you told me this morning, Nancy?" Smiling broadly, Nancy replied, "Of course, Alex." The scandalous story of Gina and Jeff will undoubtedly take center stage in cable news headlines for the foreseeable future. This vile story has all the elements of an exciting saga: wealth, infidelity, attempted murder, a stunning femme fatale, and the betrayal of friends of a lifetime. This scandal promises to surpass the fame of such sensations of the past years as Paris Hilton and Anna Nicole Smith. Gina can become the scandalous sensation of the month, and Apex will become more famous than ever in its history. Alex's story will be told on such popular shows as The Larry King Show and The Today Show, all without a single penny for advertising. He will be presented as an honest and hardworking businessman who was deceived by an insidious woman and her accomplice. When the trial is over, and Gina and Jeff are sent to prison, Apex will be featured in prestigious publications such as Business Week and the Wall Street Journal. Alex will receive the Entrepreneur of the Year award, and the company will probably receive a significant increase in new business, which can bring it $100 million. Alex will receive 10,000 letters from women claiming to be the next Mrs. McMillan, some even with photos. Such an influx of attention is a blessing for Apex. Although Gina's husband is going through hard times right now, she is on the verge of making him even more prosperous and successful. As his public relations representative, I couldn't have imagined such luck. Nancy gave me a conspiratorial wink and left the room. Gina leaned back in her chair, a wry smile playing on her lips, and she looked into the distance. For the first time in all the years I've known her, Meredith looked completely broken. I reached for the phone. "Meredith, it's time to call the police." The next 14 months may have made up for the past to some extent, bringing with them a mixture of emotions. Authorities have charged Gina and Jeff with attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and a number of other crimes. After Jeff's confession, Apex's lawyers wasted no time filing a civil lawsuit to recover the stolen funds. At the same time, I quickly took action by filing for divorce, stating adultery as the basis. Due to the lawsuit, Jeff and Gina's access to our shared accounts has been frozen. This financial setback, coupled with mounting legal costs, left them without the means to hire high-class lawyers after being released on bail. For a while, I had to resort to the services of public defenders, which was not the best option. After kicking Gina out of the house, I easily got a restraining order from the judge, thanks to a convincing video recording of her and Jeff plotting to harm me again. Gina found temporary shelter with her tennis player friend Susan, but made no attempt to contact me, which I did not expect and did not want. She seemed to realize that there was nothing she could say to change the situation. On the Monday following the settlement with Gina, I summoned Josh and Eddie to my office and immediately relieved them of their positions. Their lack of surprise was obvious. Eddie just asked me to give a positive recommendation if a potential employer would be interested in his work at Apex. I didn't have any problems with this request. Josh, on the other hand, tried to make a deal with me. He suggested that if I helped him find a new job, he would be ready to testify against Gina in court. I laughed at his audacity and quickly threw him out the door. I reminded him that I already had his confession of treason. She tried to convince him to commit theft from the company on tape so that he would agree to testify. If he had refused, the prosecutors would have simply issued him a summons. I have chosen Bernard Eisenhardt as Josh's CFO, and I'm confident that he will do a great job in this role. I instructed him to conduct interviews to replace myself as treasurer and Eddie. The trial of Gina and Jeff began about 7 months later, and it was a pleasant event that lasted almost 3 weeks. I've been to court many times, but I didn't see the need to be there every day. Unsurprisingly, the truth about what happened could not be denied, and each lawyer's strategy was to shift the blame to another. Gina stood out for her physical attractiveness and composure on the witness stand, which captivated the male jurors. Nevertheless, there was irrefutable evidence on the video that she was persuading someone to make another attempt on my life, and even Gina's charm could not overshadow this fact. Both were convicted on about 8 counts, including the most significant ones. Thanks to the wide publicity of the trial, Gina managed to get many interviews for magazines and television, which allowed her to pay for the services of an expensive lawyer. Despite the efforts of their new legal team to appeal the verdict, sentencing has been postponed, and Gina and Dudell face 10 to 15 years in prison. The stolen funds were returned to Apex, with only $72,000 missing. Since Jeff's security company had shut down, Apex needed a replacement. I flew to Los Angeles to personally thank Barry Asimov for his help, and he recommended that I hire David Carlos. David showed interest in moving to the Bay Area and has been thriving ever since. I believe that by becoming his main client, he will be able to expand his business. I offered David a job, and so far it has been successful. During my visit to Asimov's office, such an opportunity appeared. I was shocked when he showed me a video that I didn't know about. Because of everything that was going on with Gina and Jeff, I didn't have a chance to talk to him beforehand. "Come into the viewing room, Alex. I think you'll like it," he said. To my surprise and joy, I saw Charlie Pemberton, my lawyer, in bed with Gina. Even though he was almost 60, he didn't seem to satisfy her. It turned out that Gina seduced him a few months ago and enlisted his help in an attempt to circumvent our prenuptial agreement. Considering that Charlie wrote the prenuptial agreement himself, it's not surprising that he didn't have much success. Despite this, he continued to use Gina whenever possible. I found particular satisfaction in publicly exposing Charlie for his unethical actions, which led to the revocation of his license by the California Board of Legal Ethics. I also successfully sued him, confiscating $240,000 from his savings, which I then donated to charity. The whole ordeal has brought me great joy. According to both me and Apex, everything unfolded exactly as Nancy Leggett had foreseen. At first, there was a surge in media coverage on cable channels and in tabloids. I was featured on CNN, got on the cover of Fortune magazine, made National Enquirer headlines, and appeared in many other publications. To cope with the increased demands, Nancy brought in 3 new employees, and we met regularly to plan and evaluate which interviews and opportunities were worth using. Within a few months of the article's publication, Apex's business grew by almost 20%. Nancy's prediction about receiving letters from women turned out to be accurate. In a short period of time, the company received more than 8,000 letters, and they continued to arrive. After sifting through the first few hundred emails, some of which contained explicit photos, I decided to delegate the task of answering them to one of my interns. It seemed that this intern would handle romance better than me. In addition to letters, local divorced and single women began to come to the company. I've been approached by a lot of women I didn't even know existed, but to my surprise, I wasn't that intrigued. Gina satisfied me intimately until our relationship ended. I dated 4 women who attracted me, but soon discovered that I didn't like the casual lifestyle. After spending time with Nancy, I came to the conclusion that she is the one I need. We have been together for almost a year now. We are in no hurry to get married, although it may become possible in the future. It was my birthday last Sunday, and Nancy gave me a special present. We spent the previous Saturday night at her house watching an old Humphrey Bogart movie before moving on to an intimate relationship. The next morning, she let me sleep in, and she made breakfast and brought it on a tray to the bedroom. When I woke up, I saw that she was standing in a bathrobe and holding a tray. We had breakfast together, and then she started teasing me with my gift, hinting that she was wearing it under her robe. I raised an eyebrow curiously, but she just smiled mischievously. "Are you ready?" she asked with a grin, putting on a white t-shirt decorated with a scanned image of a smiling Gina. The photo was undoubtedly taken from the one Nancy found at my house. Under the image, in bold block letters, was written, "I survived the monster." I couldn't help but laugh before hugging her and saying, "Come here, you're beautiful."